over the past few years, South Africa has experienced rolling blackouts due to the ongoing crisis at Eskom. Needless to say, the search for alternative sources of power is gaining traction. There is also consensus on raising the profile of renewable energy to reduce global warming. In light of the direction the world is taking regarding renewable energy, what does the future of mobility look like? Could we be heading towards a greener transport system? Joining me now is Hetin Parmer, the director of Uyilo e-mobility program. Hetin, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Let's begin by discussing the importance of raising the profile of renewable energy in South Africa. How will e-mobility help in this regard?
Thanks, and great to join you this afternoon on the conversation. So, yeah, I think, there's global transitions both in the energy sector and the mobility sector. And we're seeing decarbonization of both sectors. And certainly energy has been at the forefront on that, and we're seeing mobility behind it. In South Africa's case, the two highest emitting energy, the two highest sectors of emissions is energy and mobility. And this is where we're seeing. So, the developments on the IRP, Integrated Resource Plan, have been in developments in the country. And there have been delays in the past, but, we've seen new announcements of the new bid windows coming out in terms of that. So certainly we have had accelerations in renewable energy deployment. And, we hope to see that being accelerated further now through the support from government's bid windows on that. Ideally, we would have liked to see greater transitions. Yeah. But, I think, we already see a footprint established in the country itself.
Speak to us now about the future of the electrification of the auto industry in the country.
Indeed. So, I think the automotive industry is facing its biggest ever disruption in the last century. And this is mainly around cities worldwide, which is markets for the automotive industry, that are banning traditional petrol and diesel vehicles. Yeah. And this is primarily around poor air quality in major cities, that is really impacting livelihoods. And this is where we're seeing markets and cities taking bold leadership steps in banning internal combustion engines within their cities. And through that, we're seeing some cities as banning these vehicles from as close as 2025. And this is where the automotive industry has faced huge challenges in radically moving forward to new technologies such as electric vehicles. So in this phase, all manufacturers have now have had to shift their portfolios and move into, there was a roadmap, so it was hybrid vehicles, and then plug-in electric vehicles, and now, certainly accelerating to fully electric vehicles. And that's where we see massive uptakes and manufacturers announcing that from 2035 or even 2030, that all their products will purely be electric. So, we're seeing that transition coming in from a global space.
But is it speeding up and shaking up the energy economy?
Yeah, so, it's twofold. One, you need the energy supply to decarbonize and also be sustainable, and also then mobility. I think in South Africa's case, if we look at the Green Transport Strategy that was launched by the Department of Transport, they highlight in South Africa's case, the transport sector contributing about 11% of total greenhouse gas emissions in the country. Yeah. 91.2% of this is contributed from road transport. That is really significant. And through that, it's really on the basis of from petrol and diesel vehicles. And through that, the other contributing factor is we have extreme poor quality fuel in South Africa. This is at Euro 2 level, where internationally we're on Euro 5 and Euro 6. And this is, another contribution on that. If we look at Johannesburg, for example, it's ranked, 15th in the world of worst polluted city. Yeah. And, obviously transport and energy are the two sectors that need to be decarbonized in order to improve air quality in our cities. And certainly transport is in that space. And through the Green Transport Strategy, we're seeing that framework come into place where strategic pillar 8 of the strategy speaks to promotion of hybrid and electric vehicles.
So in South Africa, we also need to look at the capability of e-mobility in a country where power cuts are frequent. What would the impact be on this industry?
It's a topical question that comes out. So I think, on the flip side, the conditions of the load shedding has also forced industry, consumers, everybody to transition and look at alternatives. So in essence, this, if I can call it a chaos, has forced people to start looking at, installing, renewables at their home and their businesses, and decoupling from the grid. So in essence, in the long run, we've already, through this chaos, built stability for the future of e-mobility, and through that. But let's not forget that the technology is really advanced in the vehicles. Any consumer can control when the vehicle charges, in terms of that. So you can schedule your charging, and let's not forget that 80% of charging of electric vehicles actually takes place at home, and this is overnight. So that's really where it fits in. And I think this is the difference between traditional petrol and diesel vehicles, that you have to go to a fuel station to actually refuel. But electric vehicles are opportunistic. Wherever there's an opportunity that the vehicle is lying idle, you can then charge your car. Shopping malls, home, but as I mentioned, the majority of that is overnight charging. And you've got all the systems in place to really schedule that. And then you can also pick up a charge, wherever you are, at the office or wherever it is. And also the fact that, electric car can be charged from your home socket. Any wall socket that you have, it can be charged to there. You've got a cable in the car that can pick up power from that. Yeah.
So apart from the electricity challenges facing the country, are there any other problems that could maybe limit e-mobility for the country?
Indeed. So, I think South Africa faces its own challenges, and I think this on the bank that the automotive sector in South Africa has been in existence since 1924. The country, in its prime time, it contributed 7% to national GDP. And that is on the bank of, government's production incentive program. However, we've seen the technology revolution advance so quickly internationally, and I think the policy environment has failed to keep up with that. So certainly the respective departments, Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, have certainly been looking into this, as well as organizations like NAMSA, the Automotive Business Council. And how is South Africa going to transition into this? Because there's only plug-in hybrid electric vehicles being assembled in South Africa, in East London, since 2018. But, there's no radical transition towards that. The barriers to entry in South Africa are actually the customs and excise duty that is imposed on electric vehicles. This is 25%, where, as opposed to petrol and diesel vehicles, this is 18% when imported for the EU. So already there's a barrier to entry in South Africa. Then you've got the other frameworks of ad valorem duty, the value-added tax that gets compounded onto that. So from a liability perspective, it's really, the market access for consumers is really unaffordable in South Africa. And, if we look at our current car park of plug-in hybrid, plug-in electric vehicles in the country, it's at 0.001. It's crazy. Where you look at countries like Norway, yes, certainly, we cannot compare to them, but certainly they're achieving targets of, up to 60% of new car sales are fully electric. So, there is this rapid transition towards that.
So, Hetin, before I let you go, you touched a bit on my next point a bit earlier on in our conversation. I want you to expand a bit on the incentives from government to enforce energy technologies. How would you say this sector will benefit from this?
Yeah, so I think, keeping abreast with technologies is slightly challenging, and we find that technology moves ahead of policy and regulations. But, from our respective committees and participations, the respective departments and national departments are certainly looking at the space of how can government create a better enabling environment. And I think that's the role of government through this. Admittedly, we would have liked things to be a lot more faster, but part of the work that has been done is looking at how is South Africa going to maintain its competitive advantage in this space. And through that, in the automotive industry, one of the analysis done is that South Africa is likely to lose its principal markets of export, which is the EU, because countries are banning these vehicles. So there is change that's due to be imminent now in looking at all of these, the production incentive for the OEMs that are investing billions, into the country, as well as looking at the framework. How do we relook at the importation of electric vehicles and try to create a better market for South Africa on that? So, it's not a one size fits all, in every region. South Africa has to look at its environment and how can we create, the supporting frameworks on that. So while it might not be in the public eye, certainly within the respective organizations and the government departments, they are certainly trying to look at creating a better framework for, the advance of electric mobility, because we certainly need to fast-track South Africa's agenda on this.
And what are some of the opportunities to tap into, especially for young people who are interested in the fields of engineering?
Indeed, so if you look at STEM, it just unlocks a massive opportunity under the electric mobility ecosystem, as what we call it, and that's what the WELO program has been delivering to. And it's really a myriad of opportunities. There's opportunities for new technology development when you're looking at, supporting new business development. This is where the entrepreneurs can come into play. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of skills in South Africa. And we really need to grow the awareness of what this sector can bring to the country. We can create new jobs and not only drive South Africa, but we have the opportunity to participate in a global space. And I think this is what we need to really advance. You're looking at the projections of what are the possible job creations across the value chain for electric mobility by 2030. And it's significant. Europe has projected 1 million jobs being created by 2030.
Yeah.
It's on battery technology, it's on charging infrastructure, renewable energy, so that whole value chain. And we really need to look at it from an ecosystem perspective.
All right. And as we wrap up, just tell us a bit about the work that you guys do as WELO e-mobility.
Great, yeah. So the program was set up as an initiative of the Technology Innovation Agency, which is an entity of the National Department of Science and Innovation. We were established in 2013 with a mandate to enable, to facilitate, and mobilize electric mobility in the country, and really delivering on unpacking the ecosystem for electric mobility. And we've been doing that in supporting government around policies, regulations, and standards, and then also advancing industry cohesion amongst the OEMs, the various role players, and activities thereof. So we've set up dedicated facilities and expertise around that, and really trying to bring and develop the ecosystem so South Africa can really advance into its space for electric mobility.
And how do people get in touch with your program, especially young people?
Indeed. So I think within the technology space, we have our social media channels that we really engage and create more awareness around electric mobility, because that's the key thing. And our website, www.welo.org.za, where we drive the various activities and coordinate thereof.
All right, that was Hetin Parmer. He's the director of WELO e-mobility program, speaking to us there about the prospects for e-mobility in South Africa.